You're looking for help for AP Statistics, and I'm here to help. In this video, we're going to go over 15 tips when it comes to tackling the AP Statistics exam. We're going to go over 5 general tips, 5 multiple choice tips, and then wrap things up with 5 FRQ tips. Before we jump into things, this video is brought to you by Albert. We provide thousands of practice questions to help you score well on your next exam. So be sure to check us out using the link in the video description. Without further ado though, let's get into it. Let's dig into 5 AP Statistics tips that you can do from home. The first tip is to break up your study session using the Pomodoro technique. This is where you focus intensely for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. And then you repeat this process several times. Once you reach 4 Pomodoro sessions, in other words, 4 study sessions of 25 minutes at a time, plus 5 minutes of breaking, you can then take a longer break of 30 minutes. This method is a great way for you to pace your studying and to make your study sessions fly by. Our second tip is to get to know your calculator and the common functions that you'll use when it comes to AP Statistics. This includes functions such as p-norms or binomial PDFs, or even running regression analyses or calculating confidence intervals. There's a great page by StatsMedic that goes over commonly used calculator functions for AP Statistics, so be sure to check their site out. Knowing these calculator functions can be a great way for you to save a ton of time when it comes to your multiple choice section of the AP Statistics exam. Our third tip is to practice classifying statistical inference procedures using your textbook or an app. The resource called Name That Significance by StatsMedic is another helpful resource here when you're working through this tip. You may also find the flowchart on inference by StatsMonkey to be helpful as you practice familiarizing yourself with these concepts. It's really important that you know when to implement a particular test, as well as when to implement a particular confidence interval. Tip number 4 is that you can also annotate your AP Stats formula sheet to serve as a little cheat sheet for you. Instead of just memorizing formulas, you can think about different practice problems that you've worked through in the past and how they've related to certain formulas that are provided to you on the formula sheet. This is kind of similar to if you've ever done some close reading in an English class in terms of annotating the things that are given to you. By creating this sort of mental map, you form a bit of a cheat sheet for yourself so that when you see the formula sheet come test day, you'll think about the different practice problems that you've already solved in the past related to this particular concept. If you want to check out how one professor annotated his AP Stats formula sheet, be sure to check out the accompanying article in the link in the video description. Our 5th tip when it comes to studying at home for AP Stats is to make sure that you're practicing some more. The reality is that if you're not applying the knowledge that you're learning in class, then it's going to be difficult for these concepts to stick for you. So a helpful resource to help you with that can be Albert, which provides hundreds of practice questions as well as detailed explanations to help you understand why you got a particular question right or wrong. With full-length practice exams as well, you'll be able to build your confidence leading up to test day. If you're not using an online resource like Albert, then you can also use an old school review book or just the end of chapter questions in your AP Statistics textbook. Whatever resource you do end up using though, make sure you're regularly practicing. That way you're not cramming for the exam, and also that way you're actually understanding when to use different confidence intervals or statistical tests as we went over in the earlier tips. Now that we've gone over 5 general AP Stats tips, let's go into some more specifics when it comes to the multiple choice section. Before we do so, if you're finding this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button below and also subscribe if you haven't already so that you can get more study tips like these. Our first multiple choice AP Stats tip is to make sure that you're putting down an answer for every single question. Even if you have to guess, it makes sense to do so because on the AP Stats exam, you don't get penalized for getting questions wrong. You only earn points for the questions that you get right. So when it comes to the multiple choice section, if you can eliminate some of the answer choices, then it can be a great way for you to increase the chances that you can score maximum points in this particular section. Our second tip when it comes to AP Statistics multiple choice is to make sure that you're focusing your study time on the sections that show up most on the test. It makes sense, but not every single student does this. Sometimes they deviate and spend a ton of time studying the entire course material as opposed to just the focus areas that make up the bulk of the overall MCQ section. Here are 3 of the key topic areas that are consistently tested when it comes to AP Statistics multiple choice. Inference for proportions and means makes up 22 to 33% of the multiple choice exam. Exploring data with graphs and summary statistics makes up another 20 to 30% of the exam. Probability, random variables, and distributions make up another 20 to 30% of the exam. So as you can tell, just from focusing in on these three core areas, you already are making up anywhere from 60 to 90% of your AP Statistics multiple choice exam. Now, of course, there are some other topics that will show up on your AP Statistics exam, but that being said, they're not going to show up as frequently. Some of these include experimental design, linear regression, and chi-square testing. Just remember, if you're low on study time though, focus on the topic areas that are more likely to show up. Our third tip for you is to draw sketches of distributions as much as possible. If you can take a verbal description and turn it into a visual one, then it'll be easier for you to understand. This can be really helpful when you're trying to calculate probabilities with Venn diagrams or normal distributions. It can also be helpful for finding summary statistics for skewed distributions or also envisioning trends in scatter plots. Tip number 4 is to make sure that you're practicing your binomial variables. These are things like coin flips or free throws. They typically involve random events that have any of these 4 elements: repeated trials, 2 possible outcomes, a fixed probability of success, and independent trials. This is a really specific probability topic that will save you a lot of time if you can quickly recognize it and then plug it into your calculator to solve. Tip number 5 when it comes to multiple choice in AP Statistics is to make sure that you are reading each question completely and not skimming. This is really important on those longer descriptions of experimental design or hypotheses test interpretations, because there are typically going to be a few distractors that are presented as somewhat plausible in the answer selections, but actually are meant to trick you. Be careful around these distractors because they're meant to exploit the most common misconceptions around these key statistical concepts. Alright, so we've gone over 10 AP Stats tips. If you're finding this video helpful, be sure you hit that like button below and also subscribe if you haven't already so that you can get more study tips like these. Now let's jump into 5 AP FRQ tips to wrap things up. The first tip we have for you is to make sure that you know and can use the language of statistics. Use common phrases such as on average, predicted increase, or sufficient evidence to reject the null. There's a really great free handout that goes over the top 10 phrases to use in your AP Statistics FRQs, so be sure to check that out in the link in the video description below. Tip number 2 when it comes to the FRQ section is to make sure that you are labeling everything. This includes graphs, formulas, random number tables, as well as sketches of normal distributions. Look, you don't want to lose points for lack of communicating with your AP reader, so make sure you do this for every single thing. It is better for you to over-communicate than to under-communicate in your FRQ response. This leads us naturally to tip number 3, which is to make sure that you're explaining everything thoroughly and in context. You will receive 0 credit for so-called naked answers. In other words, in the case where you got the right answer, but you're not able to show how you got there, you're not gonna earn any credit. The easiest way to solve this problem is to make sure that you're including detailed explanations that are in context to your answer. Let's go over an example of where we provide no context, followed by one in which we provide context. An example of no context would be, with a p-value of 0.018, we have sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis at a 5% significance level. On the flip side, an example in which we would be providing context would be something along the lines of, with a p-value of 0.018, we have sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis at a 5% significance level and conclude that the manual dexterity for people who completed the 6-week training program has, on average, significantly increased. Do you notice the difference? The difference is that in our first example, we didn't provide any context as to what we were actually concluding, whereas in our second example, we provide the context behind what we are actually saying. There's a difference between just saying something and actually demonstrating that you've mastered the concept of testing in this situation. Our fourth tip is to read through every single question first and see which ones you think are easiest to tackle. We recommend that you first tackle the easiest question and then follow that up by tackling the investigative task before then completing the rest of the remaining questions. The reason why we suggest you do this is because you only have 13 minutes for each of the standard FRQs, and you have 25 minutes for the investigative task. This means it's super important that you are pacing yourself so that you leave yourself ample enough time throughout the course of the AP Statistics exam to complete every single question. Our fifth tip for you when it comes to the FRQs is to use strange acronyms to help you remember common statistical procedures. Here's an example. If you're describing univariate distributions, you might use an acronym such as SOX, in which S stands for shape, O stands for outlier, C stands for center, and then S stands for spread. If you're learning scatter plots, you might use something like FODS. FOD stands for form, outlier, direction, and strength. We also have 3 more that you can use. For example, you might use EMC3 when it comes to constructing a confidence interval. In that situation, we're talking about estimation, measure, check, compute, and then communicate the results. Or we might use something like PANIC, which outlines parameter of interest, assumptions, name the confidence interval, and then conclusion. And then lastly, we might use something like HMC3 when it comes to hypothesis testing. In this situation, we're talking about hypothesis, method, check, compute, and then communicate the results. You'll notice that some of these acronyms are pretty similar, so you're gonna wanna practice learning these acronyms so that you master them for the FRQ section. If you find it helpful, be sure to check out the accompanying blog post to this video in order to see a written list of these acronyms. If this video has been helpful for you, do us a favor and hit that like button below, and also share it with all of your other AP Statistics classmates. You might also find it helpful to share it with your teacher in case they're looking for extra review resources to share with your class. Whatever the case may be, if you need help studying or just feeling more confident about your AP Statistics exam, be sure to check out Albert for hundreds of extra practice problems. Like I mentioned earlier, we provide detailed explanations for every single question that you practice on our site, which makes it really great for you to master your weaknesses and then score a 4 or 5 on your exam. That's it for this time though. If you need extra help for your AP Statistics studying, be sure to check out our accompanying video, which goes over how to get a 5 on AP Statistics in 7 simple steps.